Hey guys, you know how much I love spacesuits, how much I love NASA. I've worn spacesuits at several Comic-Cons, and you probably saw in the rocket special of Mythbusters that I was wearing a really beautiful Apollo-era spacesuit, which turns out to have been made by my friend Ryan Nagata, and we are here in Ryan's shop in Los Angeles, and we are looking at your newest project. Ryan, this is magnificent. Now, Ryan does, I think, the best Apollo replicas out there right now. His work is incredible. And now that I've overtalked you, walk me through this brand new suit that you've just made. It's different than the one you made for me.
Yeah. Well, the one I made for you is the A7L, which was the suit that was worn on Apollo 11 through 14. And this suit I made for myself as just kind of a display suit. And this is the A7LB. Because they redesigned the Apollo suit for Apollo 15 through 17 because the first suit you couldn't sit down in it. So they had to sit down in the lunar rover.
So you put a little more junk in the trunk? You have a little more material so you can sit?
The way I designed it is different a little bit than yours, but the way NASA designed the actual suit was that they moved these connectors up because your suit has the
mine's got the 2 rows of 3 and this is spread across the chest instead of down.
Yeah, so the A7LB had an added joint in the waist so that they could sit in the lunar rover, which is the car that they drove around on the moon.
So what is it about the A7LB that really got you excited, that made you want to make a replica?
Well, I hadn't seen a lot of replicas of this particular suit before. And so I thought if I'm making a suit for myself, I just wanted it to be a little different.
Can you talk about some of the manufacturing? I mean, you've got some stitching here that seems so incredibly precise. Are there, do you get this right the first try every time?
No, I don't. I've done many versions of this. And I've gone through many different techniques to try and get this seam right. These are called flat felled seams. It's the same seam that you have on jeans, where it's basically like 2 layers of fabric like this with 2 stitches. It's not truly a felled seam, like...
You're kind of faking it?
Yeah, I'm kind of faking it by sewing it once and then folding it over and then stitching twice in a line. And I've got a foot for a sewing machine that can actually line it up perfectly, but I did some experiments with like a double needle, and it just ended up looking a little bit better.
Okay, so like the sewing is totally amazing. I mean, nobody else is doing these double stitches and stuff, but also the hardware, now I touch it, it's resin, but it looks completely genuine. And I know you have some special techniques with the mold making. Can you walk us through that? Maybe grab one of the molds and talk us through how you do this stuff?
Yeah. Sure. This is one of the molds that I use for the parts here.
Okay. All right. So I see connectors, and I see the oxygen valve, and this is the neck ring?
I think somebody that's really familiar with molds like Frank would probably recognize immediately that you can't really do this. Like, you can't put all these pieces like this, because I found that once I put resin in here, like, it's really hard to demold all of these pieces.
Oh, right, because they support each other and make it hard to get them out.
My idea was that in order to make these things really fast, I wanted to put everything in like one mold and stick it in a pressure chamber. So, like, I would use like a slow setting resin.
Sure.
But it turns out, like, if I fill this entire thing up, I can't demold everything, so I have to use it in pieces. So.
Okay, so walk me through what is, like, I see these are really crisp molds.
Yeah.
But you have a painting technique.
Yeah. Well, I've done it a couple of different ways, but these are just painted with like a metallic automotive paint.
On top of the resin?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I kind of weather the edges with silver rub and buff, just like the prop makers like.
Yeah.
It's not like, there's a difference between how I weather these things versus the way they really look. Like, I haven't found a lot of these anodized aluminum connectors where the edges are worn, unless it's like a training suit.
Yeah.
But I just think for like when it's resin, to add that little bit of extra like metalness.
Yeah.
Like, it's good to put that on there. So again, like, when you look at these suits in museums, the connectors are usually pretty pristine, but I think it just looks a little bit more authentic.
I totally agree. I agree with your approach entirely. Also, come here, Joey, take a look at this incredible wrist ring here. Like even down to these buttons don't actually work, but you can only tell by pushing on them. You use magnets to connect to the gloves?
Yeah, the real disconnect was a very complicated mechanical part, which I just didn't have the time or the ability to duplicate.
I've held one, and it blows my mind that it works. And the real ones are actually, they're slip, after you lock them, they're slip fits, and yet they don't leak. I kind of know what's going on in there, but I don't know how that works.
Yeah, well, they have these little catches inside that when you turn the thing, they lock into place.
Like a bank vault, kind of, right.
Yeah, but
how they make that airtight, it's like...
Yeah, well, you'll have to talk to one of your NASA friends for that.
Okay, so like how long, what is the process of making this? How long does this suit take you?
Well, it's tough because every one I make gets a little bit faster because the process gets a little bit more efficient. Mm-hmm. This suit probably took about a month to make, but a lot of like all the mold making, everything took years.
Right. I see. So it's not like you're building it from scratch.
Yeah.
And I noticed you've got patterns out here. Are these all patterns for this suit or for multiple suits?
These are patterns for this and the A7L, which is the one I made for you.
And is there some crossover, or there's almost no crossover in terms of the patterns?
No, there's a lot of crossover. I could walk you through every subtle little difference, but...
I don't think we have time. But so your preferred material for patterns is this sort of shirt cardboard?
Yeah, well... I hate those patterns that you buy, like the tissue paper ones that you have to cut out, and then you pin them to the fabric. And I found that if I made patterns out of this like chipboard stuff, that I could actually just stick them on the cutting table, and then I have like a cutting wheel.
Right.
And also I recommend, like if you're making a lot of garments, to get the biggest cutting table or cutting mat that you can find. And so
this is a really nice big table, man.
So I made this whole table like a cutting mat. And I stick these things down, and I could basically just take a cutting wheel and just cut all the way around it. So
oh wow!
I don't have to use scissors.
And you use the cardboard as a guide for the cutting wheel.
Yeah. Sometimes if it's really intricate, I'll trace it and then cut it separately. But you can see this pattern actually is a hybrid, because this is where the A7L collar goes all the way down here, and for the A7LB
stops there.
So I just did that. It's a little bit different. The reason was the A7L this has a zipper in the back, so I can put it on the ring. But the real one did not have a zipper back here. So just imagine that's not there.
How did they get into it?
The A7LB has this side zipper. It's kind of like the Mercury suit.
Oh, wow.
And again, I had to...
What a nightmare to get in that.
It's actually, believe it or not, it's easier to get in this suit than the A7L.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, look, you've done the padding all the way inside.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Also, for a reason I don't know, the liner of the A7LB was blue, and the A7L was white, and I just liked the look of the blue liner.
Of the liner.
But yeah, the zipper goes all the way around. It's 2 zippers.
Oh, okay.
And the real suits had pressure sealing zippers on them, which is...
right, yeah, of course. Here's some of Ryan's attachment techniques on the back. Pretty straightforward.
And it's got these plastic bands to add some bulk, because I'm not really pressurizing the suit. So.
Right, so this is ABS, is that right?
Yeah.
And you're just using that to provide some structure. So is that what's giving the legs here their sort of fluff?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of batting and the plastic. I didn't want to put too much batting on it because it was a costume, and I didn't want to pass out from heat exhaustion. But
I know that one well.
But so I added the plastic rings to give it a little bit more bulk without putting too much batting in there.
Ryan, it's just beautiful. What is the next step with this one?
This one I've got to finish the boots.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna weather this one.
Now, how do you weather it? The weathering on the one that I have is so subtle. It's just like in the seams, but it's really like, what's your technique?
Well, I did yours deliberately kind of subtle because I figured you would add as much. You can't take it off.
Right.
So I figured you would add as much as you wanted. This one I kind of want to look like. There's a really great photo of Gene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt at the end of Apollo 17 inside the lunar module.
Yeah.
And they're just covered in moon dust.
Oh, so you're going to make this real dirty.
Yeah, I was going to make this look like it was moon used and put the dust on there. And I have, I got like a lunar soil simulant from the Johnson Space Center.
Are you going to use the actual simulant?
Well, I don't have enough of it, so
Okay.
it was just a color reference. I ended up mixing like talc and charcoal powder until it's kind of the right gray, and then I'll just dust it on there.
You dust it in and then you pull it back off, and you dust it in and pull it back off?
Yeah.
So are you using a brush to do that? To kind of like dust it on and then rag to... or is it this is something you kind of figure out each time?
Yeah, well, I've never weathered one quite like that before, so sometimes I take a brush and I just kind of like sprinkle it on there.
Yeah.
I have this tube thing with like these holes in it that was meant for flocking. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And I was kind of thinking about maybe, I don't use it for flocking, I don't flock. But
No flocking.
I think I used it for one project once. So I think maybe I'll try putting the dust in there and getting it on there, just so it's a little more even. Because if you put like straight charcoal dust like on there, it sticks pretty well.
Yeah.
And if you put it in a weird like brush stroke, I think it would look a little off.
Now the fabric choice is really interesting here. It's got a real meat to it. Can you talk about finding this kind of fabric? This is different also, again, than the fabric that made up the one that I have of yours.
Yeah, well, I collect fabrics. Like I have a whole collection. The real one was made out of beta cloth, which is Teflon coated fiberglass.
Civilians can't really buy.
Yeah, it's very expensive. It's not made, but it's not used on the current spacesuits, so it's kind of a vintage thing.
Right.
I think there are still manufacturers that make it, but the specific weave on the Apollo suits, I don't know if you can still get that because it's very unique looking if you've ever seen it up close. So I used, I found a nylon that looks somewhat like one of the weaves of beta cloth that I used on your suit.
Yeah.
But the A7LB had a different outer layer of fabric than the A7L.
That's this one. This is the B.
Yeah, this is the B.
Okay, so it's got like a finer fabric.
Yeah, they switched over to a 100% Teflon fabric just for the outer layer. They used to put, in the early missions, they would put patches of Teflon fabric in the areas that they thought would abrade the most. And I think when they made the B, they just decided to switch over to make the entire outer layer of Teflon. And it has a finer, kind of flatter look.
Yeah.
Than the A7Ls, if you've ever seen the suits in museums. And so sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I found a fabric that was actually had a light blocking layer in it, which is good.
So it's totally opaque.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just had that Teflon. If you've ever held Teflon fabric, it has kind of a weird
kind of sheen to it.
Yeah, it's like it has a certain sheen and it has kind of a silky, slippery feel.
And you wanted to get the feel as well as the look.
Yeah, well, part of it is because of the way it drapes. Like I wanted the way when you look at the Apollo suits, they have a very specific look.
Yeah.
And I wanted a fabric more important than like the fine detail. It was more important for me that like the bigger picture looked right and draped right.
Yeah.
So this particular fabric, I think I may even end up using this fabric for the A7Ls.
In the future.
In the future, because just the way it drapes and feels.
It feels a lot more.
Yeah.
Now, you've got some other parts over here. Can we take a look at these?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I like can barely contain myself with the toys I'm seeing. You made the camera.
Yeah.
Can I pick one of these
sure.
up? This is. Oh, dude.
So that's actually for you. That one.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. This is like, it's amazing how light it is. What is your process? I have so many questions.
Well, the real Apollo camera mounted on the front of the suit, and it had this arm, but
like
it was
this.
It was never meant to be worn in Earth gravity, just 1/6 lunar gravity. So
you actually made it. You actually accommodated for gravity in your camera replica.
Yeah.
That's a deep cut, man.
Yeah. But it's just a hollow resin cast
of an actual Hasselblad.
Yeah. Well, there's a commercial version of the Hasselblad, which was for normal people to buy, and then there was the lunar version that they made for NASA. And so I took like one of the commercial.
That's a commercial version.
That was broken,
Okay.
and so I didn't have any guilt about like taking it apart
Yeah.
and destroying it. And I converted it to the lunar version.
And that's what this is? This is one of the steps?
Well, it's yeah. Well, first I cast this because I had to mill off the top, and,
Right.
and I couldn't do it here, so I made a casting of it first.
Right.
It was just kind of a throwaway, and I put all the parts. Oh, so that.
Oh my
yeah.
God, that's totally brilliant. Okay, can I explain this?
Yeah,
This
sure.
is so cool. Okay, so I see this and I think Ryan must have acid etched or laser etched these, but now I'm looking at this and I see that it's a vinyl applique, so you did vinyl cutting.
Yeah.
And that gives you what looks like an etched.
Yeah.
That is the coolest low-tech solution to getting really excellent markings. That's awesome.
And then when you weather it, like with oil paints, and then it just collects in the recesses there, it's become
Just a
more
little
visible.
bit of dark to add that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, come in close and take a look at this. It's absolutely gorgeous.
But that was a detail of the lunar camera that I thought looked really cool, so I definitely had to duplicate that.
How are you printing on silver? Is this, are you printing here to do this, or are you sending this work out?
No, that's there's all kinds of like transfer papers and adhesive papers you can buy online. That's just like a foil one for laser printers.
Amazing. It's really hard to communicate how incredibly hilariously light this is, and yet how real it looks until you touch it and you realize that it doesn't weigh anything. Okay, we should move on because there's actually several things to look at. This is new. I have not seen. I have the undergloves on my suit. These are beautiful.
Thank you. Well, I made the intravehicular suit only for you.
Oh, okay.
But the plan was always to make the external parts that they wore on the moon, like the visor and the backpack and the gloves and the boots. So I made these gloves for you.
For me?
Yeah.
No way.
These are for you.
Oh, dude, okay. So I've got some stuff to send you too.
Okay, thank you.
We are patrons now of each other's collections. Oh my
It's always fun to do the toy exchanges with that.
Oh, that is so cool. I actually made a life vest for my Apollo suit, which I don't think we've covered on Tested.
Oh, yeah.
I have some pictures of it in progress, so we can do a separate little post about that, but
Okay.
I sent you
got
one of
yours
the
here
two
if you
that I
wanna show
made.
it, but-
These are magnificent. This fabric is such a great imitation of Chromel, I can't believe it.
Yeah, it's Chromel R was the stainless steel fabric that they made the lunar gloves out of.
And it's a micrometeorite protectant? Is that part
Yeah,
of it?
well, I think it's because lunar regolith is so abrasive that they need a really strong material because the hands are going to be digging through the soil and everything.
But it doesn't last very long. Like if you see Apollo gloves now, the Chromel is totally tearing on all these fronts
Yeah,
and
well,
everything.
it was woven stainless steel, so metal fatigues if you use it too much.
God,
But,
it looks, it's incredible. This is.
I did find a fabric that looks a lot like the original stuff without being actually made out of metal.
Look at this. It's even got the labeling on the side. I really also up close. It gets better and better and better the closer you get to these things.
Well, thank you.
Okay, can we talk about this?
Yeah, this is
These are called the Snoopy caps, and these
Yeah.
are the communications assemblies that the astronauts wore. But you made this.
Yeah.
But it has a very special, it's very special.
Yeah, well, I made, again, like all these things, I've made different versions of it. And the first version I made that you have, I printed this kind of unique looking pattern on the side.
And this pattern is original to the Apollo era Snoopy caps. It's called Snoopy caps, by the way, because they made them look a little like Snoopy.
Yeah.
Specifically. But the pattern on the originals had this sort of brown and tan weave.
Yeah, it's the original fabric is Teflon. This is the original fabric, by the way.
This is the actual fabric that the original. This is the same type of fabric that was used on the original.
Right.
And they don't make it anymore.
No. Well, they still make Teflon fabric, but whatever chemical process they use to make it doesn't end up generating this weird crosshatched pattern.
Right.
Which I was very obsessed with for a while. So for yours, I printed that pattern on fabric and then made the replicas, out of that. So it had this pattern. But after I did that and I posted it, there was a collector online who said, I have a small amount of that fabric from the 60s that he was willing to give to me in exchange for making him a cap out of it. So I made one for him. I made one for me.
What a great trade.
And, yeah,
You
and this
both
is like
get
the
one,
last.
And this is the last of it.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, oh, wow. So I actually possess a real Apollo era chin strap.
Yeah,
and it
I've
feels
seen
exactly like it's exactly right. I mean, of course it would be.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But, the other thing he had was he had castings of the ear
Of the little
cups.
kidneys that go in there. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And so the first version I didn't have this cutout for the ear because there's actually a speaker that would go in there.
You've got to put a real comm system in this,
Yeah.
don't you?
Well, yeah, I've got a mold for it. We can make a hollow version.
Yeah,
and
we
then
should
put
totally
something in
do
there.
that.
I think modern technology is small enough that you could easily put stuff in there.
Okay, let's move over to this big guy because this is the one that's got me, like, this is amazing, but this is a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I did not make this.
Okay, so this outer covering is Apollo era, a piece of Apollo era software, as it were.
Yeah, well, since I've been making these things and posting them, a lot of collectors have come out and generously offered up things, for me to borrow to use as reference.
And are they hoping to buy other replicas from you post facto?
Yeah, sometimes I exchange
Yeah.
like services. Like I'll make, like this gentleman who loaned me this wanted a cover, the plastic housing to go inside.
Right.
So he just gave me the cover, and so I didn't make this inside either.
Yeah.
Another guy made that and sent it to me.
But this is the greatest, I'm just going to pause here. This is the greatest argument ever for sharing your work and talking about what you're doing. Because you
absolutely.
are obsessed with NASA. You go and do a tremendous amount of research and make really accurate replicas, and it brings people out who want to help you make them even more accurate.
Oh, yeah.
And so it satisfies, it's like, it's the best of all the worlds. Because you're sharing your work and you're getting access to make your work even better because of it.
Yeah, this guy, so this is the real cover. It was used in training. But that just reminds me, like, even this Velcro that's on here, it's actually it's a specific type of Velcro called unnapped loop. And it's
Unnapped loop.
It's kind of hard to find because normal Velcro, the loop portion is just kind of all nappy and mixed up.
Randomized.
But
Right,
the Velcro on the Apollo suits was like lined up. It had an organized pattern.
Right, it looks almost like a cornfield if you
Yeah.
look up close. It's all
It's
very
called
regular.
unnapped loop. And another guy saw my replicas, my first ones, that used regular Velcro. And he's like, oh, that should, you should actually be using unnapped loop. And I have some that I'll send to you. And he just sent it to me. I was able to track down another source for it. But again, it was very generous.
So you're going to use this pattern to generate a pattern for your own. This is the Portable Life Support System, or PLIS, as the astronauts would refer to it. You're going to use this pattern to make your own PLIS cover.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to help you make the interiors here.
Yeah. So this for this top part as well. This should have a thermal cover on it as well, which I've got some patterns and stuff for.
And then we've got clearly a piece of original NASA hardware here. Of the remote control unit.
Yeah.
This is, oh, sorry, it's upside down. That's right?
Yeah, there was actually an RPF member that loaned this to me, and he made this based on patterns for blueprints rather for an actual remote control unit, and he just sent it to me as a reference to use. It was very nice.
It's terrific. I mean, it's great reference. It's like this. You can make a beautiful cloth pattern using this as your guide.
Well, I actually appreciate that he sent me his wooden mock-up because he sent me blueprints. But I have a real tough time following blueprints.
Fully parsing
I mean, they're just I can do it.
Right.
But
it's just it's a lot of brute force thinking to
It's nice to have a physical piece that you can just measure and quickly reference when you're making your replica.
Are you going to remake this on your milling machine?
Yeah, I can probably mill something that size.
Yeah.
This one is just made out of wood, but the real ones were aluminum. It's actually a really complicated pattern.
I actually have an indexing head and slitting saws. So I have all the equipment necessary.
You could probably make that in a few minutes then.
Yeah, well, actually, I think the thing to do would be maybe lend me this thing, and I make a long piece of it.
Oh, okay.
And we could slice out the dials that we need.
Like cookie dough.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because we should have them be aluminum, don't you think?
Yeah. And then that one was aluminum too.
All right, so you're working now on the full extravehicular assembly.
Yeah, so hopefully within the next couple of months, I'll have a full outer suit. Since I started posting the spacesuits and stuff, a lot of collectors and museums have contacted me about making replicas, but most of them want the EVA,
The full
with the
thing.
gold visor and
Yeah.
everything, and so that's what I'm working on now.
That's
to get
great.
that
So
done.
you're actually you're building a career as the replicator
Yeah,
based on the original obsession.
Yeah, well, I made my first Apollo spacesuit when I was 14 years old. And it was a pretty good replica. I like won a costume contest with it, and Jim Lovell actually signed the back of this photo. I've got that at home.
That's great.
But years later, I was like, I should make a really like accurate replica now that I have a lot more skills. And so I just started making them and posting it on the RPF, and then you saw it, and then I made a suit for you, and then just it kind of slowly grew into something that I ended up getting a space to do.
That's amazing. That's totally inspiring. Ryan, thank you so much for showing me all this
course.
beautiful stuff and beautiful work. I'm Adam. This is Ryan. We are Tested. We'll see you guys soon.